Hello, all, and welcome back to another episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are continuing our journey through A24 August with the film Showing Up. Sarah, do you want to kick us off with an IMDb summary for Showing Up?
Sure. A sculptor preparing to open a new show tries to work amidst the daily dramas of family and friends.
All right. And in our usual tradition, let's start off with our one-sentence summaries for Showing Up. What was yours?
Mine is an ode to crocs, pigeons, and the struggle of meeting a deadline.
Yeah, it's an eclectic collection of things.
Yeah,
But
we got a lot going on.
But they are all very much a part of this movie.
They sure are.
My one-sentence summary is, if you thought life was exhausting, try adding a sick pigeon who doesn't thank you.
It's true. The pigeon never says thank you.
The pigeon just flies off in a majestic way at some point. Yes. All right,
Wild.
so let's start off with our initial thoughts about this film, and then we will include a spoiler alert, and then we will have full rate. All right. I'm very curious. Did this movie work for you, Showing Up?
Yeah, it really did. I had a great time with this movie.
I had a feeling.
Yeah, it's not surprising. This is definitely not a movie for everybody, but yeah, it had me hooked. I think there's a number of things. Number one, it's set in Portland, and this is such a Portland movie, and I just love Portland. So like, there's that whole vibe that I just love, but also the overarching message of like showing up for your craft and working on your creative pursuits and all of that. Like, that's just something that I love, that is always going to resonate with me. So yeah, I had a great time with this film.
I had a feeling you might. When I was watching this film, I was like, this gives me really strong Sarah energy. I think also the themes too of this artist at work and her dedication to her craft, all of that. I was like, I think you'll eat it up.
Yep.
I did not enjoy this movie.
Yep.
Did you have a feeling as well?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I was watching this and I was like, oh no, Jen's probably having a terrible time.
And you were very on point.
I'm so
very
sorry.
on point. It's all good. It's fun when we have these conversations. I was thinking about how I think After Sun to you is showing up to me, and vice versa. After Sun to me is showing up for you,
Gotcha. Yeah, I can see that.
If we were manifested into A24 movies, perhaps that would be maybe not our top choice, but pretty fun representations. Yeah. I can appreciate this film. I think it's doing a lot of interesting things. It's just also unconventional for most of the films that we see today. There's so much brimming beneath the surface with so many of the themes and the lines and the plot devices that I think is interesting. But I found this movie going experience incredibly suffocating, which maybe says more about me than anything else. But yeah, I struggled to connect with this film quite a bit.
No, I don't think that that's surprising. Just because it's very slow. Nothing really happens. Like, we're not really doing much in this movie. Like, there's some little conflict that happens, there's a little tension, there's a little deadline, but it's mostly just her going through her life. And it's not exciting. I kept waiting for like these bigger things to happen, and they never did. And so you're just kind of plodding along, and
difficult, exhausting world with this incredibly closed off protagonist.
Yes. Yeah. And I would say that Lizzie is hard to like too. Like
Yes.
she's
Yes.
very closed off. Um she has a somewhat abrasive personality at times even. So I think for me it's not particularly event driven, it's not particularly character driven either. It's just existing in this world for a little bit and just kind of like you're just in this creative space just kind of observing what's going on, and that's a very interesting way to make a movie because it's
Mm-hmm.
not your normal, it doesn't fall into one of the normal buckets. So yeah, I can see how this would be frustrating and something that you want to end.
Well, I think that there's the individual pieces of all of those things that you mentioned, um, all could work great. You know, like a slow moving, monotonous day to day type of film. Like I'm down for, but something about this world and this character just um didn't make me want to dive in and engage. And I was constantly aware of so many of the objects and plot devices that are used. Like I know there's all these deeper meanings and symbolism and the pigeon and the hot water and all that kind of stuff. But uh usually I'm excited to dive into like, oh, like what could this really represent in this person's world and what this filmmaker is trying to say and how this connects with their um their view of the world. But I just found it all, I just wanted it to end. Just wanted to get me out of this world.
Yes. Yeah, that's totally fair. I think that's how a lot of people would
Yeah.
respond to this movie. Like I can't even think of a person in my life who I could go, "Hey, watch this movie, you'll enjoy it." I think everybody else they would be like, "Oh my god, Sarah, what did you make me watch?"
Mm, mm,
So I think this is a very narrow movie. I don't think there's a large audience for this, which is fascinating to me that this was made
yeah.
because I don't think that there's a lot of people who will connect deeply with this. I think probably most people would just want it to end.
Mm, mm. But I'm curious if you had this experience as well, but I imagine that the there's a level of relatability perhaps that a viewer can experience where, life is tiring and exhausting. And when you want to dive in fully into your craft and you're constantly being interrupted, and the way that the small things in your life can like really grate on you, like I think there's something about that that feels very universal. Like there's a reason that I wanted to get out of this movie, but that from a meta perspective, Lizzie too is stuck in that world as well. Like the family dynamics and the school dynamics and her desire to pour herself into her craft, like all of that pieced together is overwhelming and daunting and sometimes just really tiring. And I think that there's something that is deeply relatable about that in and of itself too. Do I want more of that in my life? No, but I can see how perhaps people can feel seen, that yes, I too experience what Lizzie experiences and I can relate.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I think what one of the reasons why I loved this so much is because it's just kind of a different look at creativity and what it means to
Mm,
be an artist.
yeah.
I feel like a lot of movies that we see about creativity, it's like through this savant, who is
Hmm.
just creating these larger than life things, and it's just so big and flashy, and that's cool and that happens. But a lot of people who are creative or artists, it's more like this movie, and you just have to show up day after day to
Mm,
work on your craft. And it's hard and it's difficult and it's inconvenient. And it's not always this glamorous moment. You don't always feel good about what you've created, but you continue to show up day after day. And that's where the magic happens, is in that consistency. And so I love that portrayal because it feels very accessible to me. It feels very true to life, as opposed to some of these other expressions that are a lot more like the creative genius and everything is right. I think that showing up is it's more true to life, and that's what helped me connect to it a bit more.
Mm. This reminds me of a conversation that we've had around the rosy view of the tech startup or any kind of like business
Mm,
building that we
hmm.
see in Hollywood as well, and I think in the creative process too, we often see the glory moments and the day-to-day monotony and dedication is in montage or it's a couple minutes in a film, right? And this is showing up. The film is a slice of the long day to day work and effort and little wins and big frustrations that come along the way that feel perhaps a lot more reflective of reality than the glorified versions that we get of. We've seen so many films about writers and actors and musicians and whatnot that really focus on what on those high moments, the big flashy breakthrough moments because they're fun. It's far more
Hmm.
fun than
Yes.
the showing up experience.
Oh yeah, it's 1,000% true. I also like that this movie isn't like she's not some like really accomplished artist, she's not a
Yeah.
household name. She's not making a bunch of money off of her art, but she's just like a regular person who loves doing this thing even when it's hard. And so I think I also really love that component that she's just a regular dude and out here doing her thing. I don't know, that's more fun to me, even though it's not flashy and exciting and all of the things. It's just like, yeah, you can be
Mm.
a regular person who loves your craft. And so you do it.
I think it's a fairly interesting creative choice to make her so difficult to love. I think that there's
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
feels so significant to also what this movie is looking to say and communicate because there's a level of immediate empathy that we probably feel towards a charismatic protagonist who is slaving away and pouring into her work, and this would be such a different movie, I think, if she was an incredibly charismatic personality, a breath of fresh air, or someone that we just want to follow and want to spend time with. And the fact that she's not feels significant to perhaps communicating that hard truth, about the mundane parts of the creative process that I think is because it doesn't immediately garner this sympathy or empathy that we have for a protagonist that's doing the work.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I loved that choice as well. I also wondered while watching if Lizzie is like neurodivergent in some way, just based on some of her responses to what's going on. Like she wasn't just struggling at certain moments because she's stressed about her piece, but there was this like need for control that felt like another level. And some of the way that she interacts with people, she feels more comfortable with animals than people. She struggles to communicate and connect. And so I wondered if there was something else going on there, more than her just having like an abrasive personality, but she actually processes the world differently. And so we're just seeing that. I don't know. I don't know enough about what that could be, but I did wonder, is there something else going on with this character than meets the eye?
There is an interesting pattern throughout the film of her being the most at peace when it is late at night and she is working, and so many of the interactions that she has during the day where she's out and she's surrounded by people, she's in her office working her desk job or visiting family, that um I too felt the like freneticness for her of this is overwhelming and this is a lot, and the sense of relief I felt with her when she gets home, can close the door and just breathe. There's a I wonder if that stimulation is extra exhausting for her than perhaps the average person.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Her home, when she gets home, it really is this
Mhm.
oasis for her. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then when things go wrong, like when her hot water is broken, that just makes
Mm,
everything worse because
mm,
that is her oasis and her safe space.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. Okay, let's include a spoiler alert here. If you haven't seen Showing Up, it is available to rent or purchase on multiple streaming platforms. All right. Now we have full reign over the course of the many eventful things that happen in the ending of this film.
Yeah, that you just wanted to get out of.
Yes. I am curious your thoughts actually about the ending because it it seems like such an intentional choice to end a movie like this in the way that it does. There's a well, before I say anything further, I'm curious your interpretation of that ending sequence with the bird and the overhead shot of these two women walking down the road. How did you read that, or how did that help you understand more about what this film is looking to say?
Yeah, I first off, I was so stressed the entire movie that one of her sculptures was going to get broken. Like,
Mm.
first with her cat in her apartment, I was like, oh my God, is the cat going to knock something over? And then, like, at the showing, there were two children running around, and I was like, oh no, the kids are going to break it. And then they let the bird loose, and I was like, oh no, the bird is going to kill the sculptures. Like, I was stressed the whole time. Very thankful that the bird did not kill the sculptures. Um, but yeah, I really love that the whole movie is Lizzie working up to this showing, and she's putting in so much time and effort into crafting these things uh, to display, and then she leaves during the showing to go find this bird. I just thought that that was so interesting. And honestly, I get that. I get that choice because I would hate to like have this thing that I've worked so hard on and then I'm displaying it to everybody and everybody is in there with me looking at the things and telling me about the things that I created like ugh, that would make me want to puke. Um and so like I do get this desire to create regardless of outcome. And so I think that that choice made me relate to Lizzie a bit more. Um, and I also just love that she just thought the bird was gross at the beginning of the movie. And I totally agree that bird was gross. But by the end, it really was a friend to her and she just went to go see if she could find her friend. And I just again I think that that's another kind of cool thing that made me relate to Lizzie a bit more. That she went to go look after this bird. Like I wouldn't befriend a bird, but I might befriend a different animal. um, I don't know. I liked the ending. It felt fitting, even though it might seem a little bit anticlimactic. It worked for me.
Well, and that ending shot of the two women walking down the street, I feel like was oddly sweet and sentimental for a film that is
Hmm.
not that at all, and
Yeah.
even though like little lines that we can't hear clearly, but of Hong Chao's character asking like, "Hey, you want to get a cigarette?" Like there's a these two women throughout the course of the film are landlord tenant peers in a lot of ways. They're in each other's orbit, and while they may have had their kind of like tense conversations or tense relationships and annoyances with each other, there are a couple of shots of them appreciating each other's work and still kind of going and supporting and being there, um, even though they are kind of in the same program and whatnot. And there is this like weird dynamic that they have, but I just thought that there was like an interesting camaraderie that ultimately that the two of them as artists feel together that can trump and um, triumph over any of the other like day-to-day stuff that they might get annoyed with each other on or whatnot. Like that final shot felt incredibly sentimental in a way that I didn't expect from this film, which I thought was just an interesting way to leave the cherry on top, or bring that tail end of this story on an upwards little curly cue at the end, for a film that is pretty straightforward and monotonous, and clear-eyed about reality, and displaying reality.
Yeah, yeah, we needed a little hopefulness there for you. Just a
Yeah,
dash.
just a little sprinkling, a couple, like two sprinkles on top of the cupcake.
It's true.
Like this
That's all
cupcake
you
that
get, though.
has
It's
this
just
cupcake that
2.
has no icing.
Correct.
Definitely not
Yes.
Funfetti.
There was no sugar in the cupcake.
Oh
You will
no.
only get the 2
It's
little
actually
sprinkles on
bread.
top.
It's actually just bread.
But I
Yeah.
I do love that their kind of adversarial relationship is it is that way. Like, I don't know, I love that they're not best friends in the beginning and they're not best friends by the end, but they are like sharing custody of this pigeon, and that's how they can kind of bond with each other in kind of a weird way. Like, I don't think that Joe has a particularly likable personality either. Like, she is also pretty abrasive, even though there are moments that I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool what you're doing." Uh, so I just love how these two women that are so different and yet so similar are interacting with each other throughout the film, and so it is a slightly hopeful ending without making it like too overly rosy, so that it's incongruous with the rest of the film.
Yeah, there's a very, very understated bond that they seem to have formed, um, despite all the other factors at play. They share this little moment with each other, and through the vehicle of this pigeon too. Like, I just
Yeah.
it's so wild.
Of all the animals too, a pigeon.
Okay, I loved the moment though
That's
where she
amazing.
was like, "You paid $150 and took this pigeon to a vet."
Right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's one thing that I grew to appreciate over the course of this film is we can see the walls and they're very apparent with Lizzie at the beginning of the film. But over the course of the film, we see the way that she gives a lot and pours out a lot. It's very understated, but even the way that she shows up for her family, and even though she doesn't particularly want to, or she's not very affectionate outwardly, there is a sense of care that she has for her brother that we see, a concern for his well-being, and looking out for him. She goes to visit her father. She's connected with her mother. Like, there is a sense of um, love and expressiveness that I think is so buried beneath the surface, but over the course of the film, we get to see those moments. And so she becomes a lot more interesting and complex and dynamic of a character towards the end of the film. And I think that that's pretty interesting to see based on like the little choices that she makes throughout her day to day.
And especially because she seems to struggle connecting with people, I really appreciate that she continues to try to do so, and she tries to connect with others, even though it's not the easiest thing for her or the most comfortable thing for her. I really like how much the film highlights her efforts and her attempts to be there for the people in her life, even though she would probably prefer to just be isolated in her studio 24/7. She continues to make those attempts. I loved that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was a really like sweet part of this film as well, and resonant of the title around, yes, she's showing up for her work and her craft and for herself in a lot of ways, but also there's a deep like interconnectedness that she does have with her family. We can't It's not obvious and it's not expressive, but it is there, you know. And the other thing that I thought was interesting about her character is that her art is so dynamic and expressive with emotion, and it's just such a contrast to the creator, the person behind it. You know, those clay sculptures that she creates are so um, whimsical and emotive in their expression of both joy and um, elatedness with some of those figurines, but also with anguish as well. And that full spectrum is shown through her collection. And she is so not that in how she expresses herself. So that was really neat too, to see how her art is really this outlet for ways that she can express herself that she doesn't in and of her own being. So that was really neat to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I love that. That there's so much going on within her, and and she just doesn't always express it in the ways that we might expect. So it comes out in these other different creative ways that might not always be expected or appreciated by others. Like there's even that comment from her mom that like her brother is a genius artist, and you
Yeah.
just see her going like, "Wait, what?" Like I'm an artist too. And so even that understanding of she's expressing so much and not everybody is going to understand it or connect with it maybe as deeply as she does.
Yeah, and the opening credits are such a misdirect, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because we fixate for so long on these sketches that are expressive and dynamic and also incredibly colorful too. There's a lightness about them. There's a sense of whimsy about them in a lot of ways. And so the person that we expect behind them, I don't know about you, but it was not Lizzie. You know, that she's a prickly personality, especially when we first meet her in a lot of its opening scenes, and she's at her desk job and just so uninterested, so unemotive, so unwilling to connect with any of the people that are coming by through her office. And that was shocking. That was a total 180 turn from the type of personality that I was expecting her to be when we first are introduced to her, based on the visuals and the pieces that we fixate and spend a lot of time on in the opening credits.
That's interesting. I don't know that I was surprised based on the drawings. I think I was a little surprised based on like all of the other movies that exist. I think I was expecting something different. I expected this movie to maybe follow a more traditional roadmap, but I don't know that I necessarily inferred anything about her as a character from the drawings. I think I was just going, "Oh my gosh, I love this art. This is so fun. I'm excited to be in an artsy fartsy movie." Uh, I think I was thinking more about the vibe rather than the character.
Yeah, but the mood and the atmosphere that's created from this light, airy, colorful, whimsical art that we see is just a contrast to the 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 aura that she puts out into the world. Like she
Mm,
is sucking the life
mhm.
out of that office, you know?
It's so true.
And
She's so miserable at the computer.
she is so over it.
Oh,
She
poor
is
thing.
done.
Yeah.
But those pieces and those drawings with the watercolor are so life-giving and colorful and light, you know? And so that was just such a contrast for me. It was a little whiplashed.
Mm-hmm. I think I took it more as like, her when she is creating, obviously like life-giving, wonderful, all the things, but then you can't always pay the bills with your art.
Mhm.
And so it's that reality of, okay, I have to put on my other hat and go do the thing that actually pays the bills so that I can then go back and do the thing that gives me life. And so I think, I don't know, I maybe wasn't as whiplashed because I understand that dynamic and have been in jobs where it's just like, oh my God, this sucks. And all I want to do is just create. And I can't do that here, but this is paying the bills. So I am here. I don't know. I think because I have this creative side of me and I love like creating various types of art and things, I think I empathize with Lizzie a lot more, even though she's not the most likable character at times, just because I was like, yes, art world, I got you, girl. I don't know.
Mhm.
It's interesting.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I think just tonally for the film too, it's just a
Yeah.
different set of, um, moods that we are put in
Hmm.
throughout the film. You know, there's
Yeah.
this, whimsical little moment that we get at the beginning with Joe of her, like, rolling this tire down the street that she's
Yes.
discovered, and she's so intent. There's a childlike wonder and excitement of her creating this tire swing, and it's such a contrast to this moment of reality that comes in when Lizzie pops her head and is like, "Hey, my hot water."
Yeah.
And Joe's like, "What?" Like, "Let's swing a little bit," And I
Yeah.
think we, at least, well, maybe I'll say I initially read that as just a sweet little moment for Joe that's getting interrupted, but we actually see throughout the rest of the film that Joe is kind of an ass, where she just continually
Yeah.
is unwilling to put in any semblance of effort to try and make it happen, and to restore the hot water at all. And she just seems unbothered by it. Um, and you're like, okay, lady, like, do your job. You know what I mean?
Right?
And so the way that our relationship to that whole hot water thing, and the way we're introduced to it at the beginning, to when we see later on that we're seeing the frustrations, and the difficulty and inconveniences that it causes Lizzie, and Joe's just as seems to be brushing it off so easily and so casually, that my loyalties definitely shifted on that matter.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's even interesting how there's one point in the film where Lizzie is explaining how Joe bought the apartment building, and so now she has it made. And so you almost see this jealousy from Lizzie of like, Joe is just collecting money and she doesn't have to do anything. And you can also sense her frustration of, she has all this money and she's not fixing my water heater. So I just think that that's also super interesting, this idea of like, man, she has this apartment building, so she's making all of this money so she can devote more time to her craft and she doesn't have to work as much like I have to work, but she's also not doing her job. I don't know, I thought that comment added so much complexity and interest into this dynamic, and this almost feeling of like jealousy from Lizzie because she has to continue to work, not a 9 to 5, but a more traditional desk job, which cuts into her creativity time. I don't know. Their dynamic is so interesting to me, and their characters are so interesting to me because they clash so much, but they're also so similar. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely a bitterness that you sense in Lizzie towards Joe, and it's all channeled through the hot water and these small little things, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And uh, we do this all the time as
Oh
humans, like
yeah.
fixate on small things that we're really upset about something else, or just our lives in general, or frustrated or going through it, and we need somewhere to channel it that feels validating for us, and for Lizzie, it is the hot water, and it feels convenient to channel it towards this person who is also just so opposite of her as well. Like, you see Joe, um, incredibly bubbly, and she's social, and she has people over, just like the complete opposite type of personality. And so, um, because she's also an artist too, there's just like a competitiveness that feels, it's like in human nature as well, that she's a natural choice to channel a lot of that frustration towards. Um, so And again, it's maybe difficult for us to watch because we know that it is what we all do as well, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 1,000%. And then when they're sharing a bird too, like that just increases everything as well. The
Yeah.
number of times that Lizzie reminds her about like the hot water bottle and to change the paper in there so it doesn't get gross. Like I don't know, it's so human. Like yeah, no, we
Mhm.
all do stuff like that. It just looks a little different based on our context.
Yeah. Yeah. And easy for us to be frustrated with this other person that does it when in reality you turn the
Yeah.
mirror back on yourself and you're like, "Oh, I definitely do that too." When she leaves the like angry voicemail.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yep.
So great. It's like any, you know, relationship where you just need to take it out somewhere, and often the person that's most convenient and closest to you is the one that gets to receive the brunt of all of that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know. It's hard to watch because you're like, oh crap, I do that
Mhm.
too. Oh no,
Mhm.
I need to rethink some things.
Mhm. Mhm. Okay, other things that we want to talk about with this film, things that really worked for you.
I really love how many different types of art we see all throughout this film. Uh, I think it's really easy to just think of art as like paintings or drawings or whatever, sculpture even. But every time we are in that school, we get to see little glimpses at all of these other forms of art, and I love that. You know, the girl who runs up and shows off her like knitted jumper that took her a year to make. I thought that was so cool, and you see people working on looms and working with different like multimedia stuff. You see the class that's just outside dancing to no music. Like I loved being in that creative environment. And I just thought it was so fun that the film is intentional to go, hey, look at all of these different forms of creativity. And they're all important and they are all uh, adding value to these people's lives and to this community, even if it looks maybe a little bit unorthodox.
Yeah, yeah. Just it is this like hotbed of creative people coming together, and you see the way that they share about each other's shows and supporting each other. I thought that it was also around that same vein pretty fascinating how much time the film spends showing just different short shots of people, just
Mm-hmm.
artists and people in the middle of conversation. You know, I think I noticed it quite a bit when they're at her showing, and there's just like a series of several shots of random side people uh, commenting or in a conversation. Sometimes we can't hear what they're saying or they're mid laugh. Like this film feels like it really is. I think you'd mentioned this earlier, but it's like observing the reality in the world around us. And I feel like it contributes to that feeling of being very grounded and looking to portray reality in all its multifaceted forms, including the people that are part of this community. There's just these, they're not too short, not too long, little shots of humans in their element in the midst of conversations and interactions together, which I thought was just kind of neat.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, it really felt like you were there in the midst of it, and I think especially at that showing too, the way that the sound and the acoustics are, like I felt like I was in that building, and so I love how all of these different components worked together to make it immersive in those moments, even if you didn't want to be immersed. Uh, I felt like I was there with them and just uh, kind of milling around and just hopping from conversation to conversation. It was so fun. I'm
Mm-hmm.
probably the only one who thought that, but I
No,
loved it. I had a great time.
I I thought those. I mean, it's people watching. You know,
It's very much people watching, which is a great time.
It's so fun. Why we don't need entertainment when you can just observe humans in their element, um, or out of their element. That's also fun too. uh,
Hmm. Yeah, people watching is a great time.
yeah, yeah. The other thing that I thought was interesting, just as a creative visual choice, is the graininess of the texture that we see. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
No, I loved it. It lends itself to the vibe of
Yeah,
the whole movie. uh, and I really appreciated that it's kind of like this unfinishedness almost, and this making it feel like a work in progress, almost like it doesn't have this polish and this gloss that you might expect. So I think it lended itself to just the creative endeavors and also just the humanness of the characters and how we're going through this without without trying to put a rosy gloss on it. We're here, and this grit just kind of helped reinforce that for me.
yeah, I loved that choice too, and the other aspect of that is just the incredibly muted color palette. Not overly so, but it is. This is not a colorful film at all, and it is not glossy at all, which just feels in keeping with this theme around let's portray real life as it is, and the everyday mundane parts of daily life as well. um so I think you maybe referenced this in your earlier thoughts around the like Portlandness feeling of this. Like this is grounded, this is gritty, this is there's nothing flashy and smooth and polished and urban about this at all. um Understated in kind of a really beautiful way.
Hmm. Yeah, it really is a whole vibe.
Yeah. And it's in line with Lizzie as a character. You know, like she
Hmm.
too is grounded, and there's an understatedness about her as well. I thought that there's a line that her brother says to her when he's digging the hole, which I just feels like is the mantra of this entire movie. And he says, "You have to listen to what isn't being said. So many people choose not to hear." And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that is when he said that, I was like, that is the perfect way to describe this movie, which is that on the surface, there doesn't seem to be much there, but if you really dig a little bit, there's a lot that is being said without needing to be said so explicitly, um, and it's there for if you want to find it and spend that time and work to uncover them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Yes. And so like one of my favorite moments in this is at the her showing. um the guy Eric, he's talking with a little group, and he is talking about how when he's in his flow he can do no wrong. And I loved the inclusion of that line in this movie, because the whole movie is about just like showing up and just working your craft and pursuing this creative endeavor. And I don't know, I feel like there's this myth that uh, if you're not in a flow, then nothing good can come out of it. And so like a lot of times, especially with like writers, I know if if you feel like you have writer's block, then you're like, oh, I can never create, I'm not a writer, blah 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 blah. But the magic comes when you show up, and by showing up consistently day after day, then eventually those flows will happen. And so I love the way that that line is included towards the end of this, because I feel like that's again really reflective of creativity. Like you show up day after day, and it's hard and it's hard and it's hard, and then all of a sudden you get in a flow, and it's wonderful, it's great, you feel like you're on top of the world, it's just the best. And then you go back to just showing up day after day after day after day, and maybe another flow moment will come. So I just, that was such a little line in this movie, but for me that was one of my favorite moments. That was really like a aha
Mm,
moment that helped
mm,
really like tie this movie together for me.
mm. I love that. I love that. See, I love what this film represents more than the experience of watching it, is
That
where
makes
I've
sense.
landed.
That makes total
Because,
sense to
yes,
me.
yeah, yeah, that is such a underrepresented experience, point of view, part of life that is just missing from the broad gamut of movies and stories that we tell, because again, it's not fun, you know. And it is this interesting uh tension at play here of, are we showing and creating moments that people can experience where they can escape from reality and the mundane parts of reality, and when they do come to escape, if we give them more of reality, like perhaps that can resonate, perhaps it doesn't, but um, we tend to, I think, show the big moments because they're emotional and they're fun and they're big and entertaining for us.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. This is not a movie to escape from. Like you go to the movies sometimes to escape the realities of life into another world, and
Mm-hmm.
this is not one of those.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it is pretty mundane.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Any other last thoughts about showing up?
There's also a moment towards the end where it's almost time for the gallery, and Lizzie is freaking out about the cheese. And the person working at the gallery does such a good job at just calming her down and responding to all of her concerns about the cheese. And I loved that moment. I loved that woman working at the gallery. She did phenomenal. I want to see her handle every single interaction ever because she's incredible. And so I just wanted to give her a shout out. I don't
Yeah.
know that they ever say her name in the movie, and if they did, I missed it. I'm so sorry. But she is a hero, and she is doing a great job.
Because she too knows that it's not about the cheese. You
Yes,
know,
she
like
does.
she's her EQ and her wisdom is high enough to know.
Yeah. And you can tell, like, I would imagine being a gallery owner,
Oh
worker,
my
not sure
gosh.
exactly what her profession is, but
You
being
see
in that
every.
space, she is not unfamiliar with that. And
Yep.
she knows how to work with creative people. She knows how to work with artists. And just her that exchange was perfect.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. That was really great.
great.
All right. Well, I want to give a quick little shout out to Michelle Williams, who is doing the most in this. This is
Hmm.
such a great performance by her. I think it's a difficult role to play, and I think she brings a lot of really interesting nuance to this role that easily could teeter too much on being a sympathetic character to being just incredibly unlikable. And she somehow is constantly giving us both. And the way that she finesses that and helps usher that in throughout the course of this film, I think is really, really impressive. So I was astounded through several parts of this film. Like, wow, Michelle Williams is just doing some good things on screen here.
Well, and it's interesting because also in 2022, she was in The Fablemans.
Yeah.
That's 2022,
Such
right?
different performance.
Uh, and she's an artist in both of them. She's a misunderstood artist in both, and
Yeah.
they could not be more different. And so I love
Yeah.
that, like, high level, the characters on paper might seem a little bit similar, but they're so different. And she
Mm-hmm.
gives very different and very nuanced performances in both.
Yeah.
So that's also kind of cool to see her range as a misunderstood artist is quite wide.
Very wide indeed. Yeah. Yeah. The scene that really stood out to me with her acting performance is when she's outside having lunch. She's eating a pasta salad, and she's talking to the lady who, and they're both staring out at the interpretive dance class. Um, and the annoyance that you feel from her
Yeah.
is palpable.
Yeah.
But it's expressed in such small facial expressions or the way that she chews her food, where you feel the fullness of the angst and only a little bit can seep out because she's trying to keep up, and be polite and sociable and whatnot. But I thought that was the perfect little encapsulation of what she does in this movie.
Mm-hmm. And there's so much there, just brimming below the surface. Yeah, it's fascinating. Like, how in the world did she do that? I don't understand.
Yeah. And what I think is interesting too in her performance is it's not just the bitterness and the angst from right now. Like we could feel the many years, the length of time of that having piled up that she is holding at bay. You know what I mean? That sense of time that we didn't spend with her as a character on screen, but we feel like we've seen that and can feel that history there. I think that was also a really interesting aspect of this as well. It's partially maybe the writing, but also partially the performance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can feel this almost like stuck in a rutness.
Yeah.
And just been in the same routine, the same mundane thing for days, weeks, months, years, and not really sure how to get out of it. But she just has to keep moving forward.
Yeah. It's rough, man.
It is rough. Man, poor Lizzie. But she's still out here. She's doing her thing. Even though it's not great sometimes.
And
just taking care of a pigeon.
Yes. All right, well, this was our review and discussion of Showing Up. You can find it available on various streaming platforms. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Movies and Us. Our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. Everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you hung out with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a review letting us know your thoughts about Showing Up. You can connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at @MoviesAndUsPod or email us at moviesanduspod@gmail.com. We will be back next week with our very exciting 5th birthday episode. Can you believe it, Sarah? It's been almost 5 years.
I cannot believe it. I also feel like we need some like fanfare or like air horns or something. Like we need, that is exactly what we need. Some sound effects because it's our 5th birthday. Like that feels worthy.
To hear your attempts at some confetti popping, some air horns.
I don't know what does confetti popping sound like though?
You know where they pop it and it explodes.
Oh, like the confetti cannons?
Yes.
It's been so long since I've been around one of those. I don't remember what that sounds like anymore. Like but that is the effect. Like I want some fanfare. I want some confetti cannons. I want some balloons.
Oh, yes.
But like balloons don't work because this is an auditory medium.
But you know what? We're going to party so hard on our 5th birthday episode that we will accidentally pop some of these balloons because we stepped on them because we were just partying and dancing so hard, you know?
That's triggering for some people and that's scary for some people. So we don't want to pop balloons, you know? That's not very nice. But we will figure out some appropriate celebratory sound effects for our 5th birthday. Or we might not because it's our 5th birthday and we're just too excited. Who knows? But it's our 5th birthday.
Yeah, I think we've risen to the challenge to attempt to do some sound effects on our own. And as we continue to grow and mature in this podcasting experience, our sound effects will also improve with the years.
Amazing. What more
as we do as human beings as well when we get older and wiser.
True.
All right, well, we're excited for that episode. It'll be a fun time to just reflect on the past year and the past 5 years. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you very soon.